Deep beneath Larimer Street in Denver lie glass windows and Roman stone arches firmly embedded against the dirt. Early pioneers possessed absolutely no capability to construct this physics-defying architectural complex beneath muddy roads. One hypothesis suggests that white settlers ignored Native American warnings to settle the dry riverbed, effectively occupying a pre-existing site buried by a prehistoric mudflow. The 1864 flood, which precisely destroyed municipal archives, was merely a cover-up for a phantom street-raising project. Facing the unexplained phenomena of a multi-billion-dollar subterranean network extending all the way to the Denver airport, humanity might not be the creators of civilization, but rather parasites living upon its ruins. According to official historical archives from the early 1860s, Denver's surface exhibited an extreme lack of infrastructure during its founding period. The confluence of the South Platte River and Cherry Creek was scattered with the canvas tents and crude wooden shacks of gold miners. Due to the absence of paved roads, the streets turned into mud pits during the rainy season, forcing merchants to lay down rough, elevated wooden planks as temporary sidewalks in front of their shops. However, when modern architectural restoration projects probed vertically beneath these boardwalks, the stratigraphic profiles revealed a severe physical engineering fault line. Since the establishment of the 1400 block of Larimer Street as a historic district in 1973, the continuous excavation of underground spaces has exposed a highly mature commercial architectural system. Standing below the current street level are structurally complete red brick load-bearing walls and complex trapezoidal stone arches. Physical inspection reports indicate that these deeply buried load-bearing walls utilized high-density red bricks fired at extremely high temperatures. The wall surfaces employed an alternating stretcher and header bricklaying technique that required advanced spatial geometry calculations. The application of lime mortar at the joints of the exterior decorative bricks was exceedingly uniform, and heavy cast-iron floral lintels were universally embedded above the doorways. The construction of the trapezoidal stone arches required not only precise engineering mechanics calculations to distribute the massive weight of the overlying structures, but also Roman Mason-level grinding skills to ensure the perfect fit of every keystone. This large-scale, standardized, industrialized architectural complex presents an irreconcilable contradiction with the capabilities of a frontier refugee camp-level pioneer settlement in the mid-19th century. Cross-referencing early Denver census and commercial license registry archives between 1858 and 1865, the demographic structure at the time consisted primarily of gold miners, fur traders, and merchants of basic supplies. A massive data vacuum exists within municipal records. The entire region lacked construction permits for large-scale modern high-temperature brick kilns. There were no transportation records for industrialized stone-cutting equipment capable of leveling hard rocks, and absolutely no registration rosters for advanced structural engineers or professional stonemason guild members could be found. For a frontier town established merely 3 to 5 years prior, where all heavy materials had to be transported across the plains via horse-drawn wagons, its maximum material production capacity was strictly locked within the realm of wooden structures. It possessed zero physical prerequisites to construct a massive subterranean network of stone arches. This disconnect between surface construction capabilities and underground physical structures spawned more specific anomalies within the sealed basements of Larimer Street. In the autumn of 1928, several old miners were hired by bootleggers to excavate deeper into the dirt within the basement of a red brick building on Larimer Street. After breaking through a stone wall, their flashlight beams illuminated a massive commercial display window. Dried mud clung to the glass surface, yet the baked enamel on the wooden window frame remained intact. On the other side of the window was dark brown dirt, compacted as hard as rock. This led to a deduction among the descendants of local pioneers. Early settlers did not fire bricks to build structures. They simply excavated a ready-made city out of the river valley's mud. In 2014, an independent geological engineering team acquired more definitive exploration data while conducting seismic foundation assessments for a Victorian-era building complex at the intersection of Market and 15th Streets. When heavy drills penetrated the solid rammed earth layer marked in municipal records, reaching a depth of 12 feet below the current street level, mapping instruments recorded a highly intact commercial street-facing facade. The core physical evidence was an underground double door facing the exterior dirt. This wooden door retained intact cast-iron floral handles and a brass keyhole. The 4 large display windows lined up on either side of the door had unbroken single-pane glass. Following the narrative logic of official historiography, municipal authorities proactively used horse-drawn wagons to haul gravel and dirt for street backfilling to prevent floods. The massive earth pressure and gravity impact generated by such filling operations would instantly shatter these fragile single-pane windows and completely crush the wooden doors inward from the outside. Yet, core sampling tests conducted by the geological team on the dirt pressed tightly against the exterior of the glass windows showed that the material encasing the building was not the mixed construction debris and gravel typical of artificial backfill operations, but rather an exceptionally fine sedimentary silty clay layer. This stratigraphic horizon characteristic corresponds to only one natural phenomenon: an extremely slow and uniform liquefied mud flow, like a high-density liquid, covered the original first floor of the building. The mud enveloped the exterior, gradually dehydrated and dried, ultimately sealing the glass and doors perfectly within the soil layer. This sedimentary state directly negates the mechanical characteristics of humans actively wielding shovels for physical backfilling. Tax and material ledgers from historical archives indirectly corroborate this physical deduction. Reviewing the 1872 underlying asset register of Colorado's Arapahoe County property appraiser Thomas, multiple commercial properties on Winecoop Street, while in a basement state, were still forcibly subjected to a lighting glass tax and a street-facing commercial frontage surcharge by the government. An even stronger piece of reverse evidence is an 1865 complaint letter from the Bricklayers Union. The union representative submitted a protest to the city council, pointing out that municipal authorities forced workers to build new wooden sidewalks at the existing second-floor level of the buildings, yet refused to allocate any budget for purchasing bricks and mortar to seal the doors and windows of the original first floors. Throughout the fiscal expenditure ledgers of Denver's first decade, there is not a single invoice for brick and stone purchases used to seal underground doors and windows, nor are there any related labor settlement receipts. Demanding the burial of the first floor without providing a budget to seal the glass windows, leaving the dirt to pile directly against the fragile glass surface, constitutes a municipal approval record that entirely violates basic engineering common sense. It indicates the archive system at the time attempted to gloss over an established fact. The foundations of those buildings and the dirt encasing them existed in that interlocking state long before the pioneers arrived. Traces of this act of directly occupying pre-existing architectural ruins can be traced back to the site selection logic at the very beginning of the city's founding. In the fall of 1858, General William Larimer led the founding members of the Auraria Town Company to the confluence of the South Platte River and Cherry Creek. Historical data records that Little Raven, leader of the local Arapahoe tribe, issued an extremely serious natural law warning to these white pioneers, clearly pointing out that the dry bed of Cherry Creek was a massive topographic trap, and cyclical flash floods would destroy everything in the low-lying areas. Facing survival warnings based on long-term climate observation by the natives, these settlers made decisions that violated basic survival logic, insisting on making camp at the bottom of the most dangerous dry riverbed. Colorado Historical Society court files and land deed records between November 1858 and August 1860 reveal a highly anomalous land-grabbing frenzy. Merely months after the city's founding, large tracts of dangerous land located at the bottom of the riverbed changed hands frequently at exceedingly high prices, and the property descriptions in the court settlement documents densely featured the term improved assets. In an initial wilderness period where the surrounding area lacked large timber resources and all supplies required months of transportation from the east, the source of these so-called improved assets became a blind spot in the literature. In the late 1980s, when modern archaeological teams conducted excavations of the Tremont House ruins deep in the dirt on the west side of Cherry Creek, beneath the parking lot of the Auraria Higher Education Center, they cleared heavy multi-story masonry foundations and underground commercial structures. These heavy brick and stone architectural remains excavated within the floodplain explain the true motive behind the early pioneers ignoring the flood warnings. The long-term erosion of the riverbed by flowing water made the surface dirt here the thinnest, making it the easiest place to expose deeply buried stone buildings. The pioneers frantically seized the riverbed and issued land deeds because they did not need to build a city. They only needed to clear the surface silt to directly convert these exposed, mature architectural complexes into improved assets on legal documents. These various physical paradoxes, stratigraphic analyses, and literature faults converge into a global mudflow burial hypothesis known as Tartaria. Exploration data indicates that the load-bearing walls of some buildings in downtown Denver do not terminate at the current basement floor, but continue to penetrate downward, extending into deeper, compacted sediments. This materializes a burial event. At some point in the early 19th century, a widespread mudflow disaster instantly engulfed a preceding city with highly developed craftsmanship. The dirt leveled the streets, completely sealing the doors and windows that once bathed in sunlight. Decades later, pioneers arriving in horse-drawn wagons discovered the majestic buildings protruding from the soil layer on this muddy plain. They cleared the minor silt from the second floors, laid down wooden planks as streets, and logically moved into the upper halves of the ruins. As geological radar scans reveal an increasingly massive and bottomless subterranean network, the entire historical timeline experiences a severe dislocation here. The human civilization displayed at this moment is not the creativity of pioneering a wilderness, but the instinct of parasitizing a massive relic. The waters of Cherry Creek, late at night on May 19, 1864, followed an extremely precise surgical trajectory, destroying the old City Hall on Blake Street and the Rocky Mountain News office building supported by wooden pilings on the riverbed. This flash flood, recorded in the historical literature compiled by Denver historian Jerome Smiley in 1901 as causing a dozen deaths and approximately $1 million in property damage, was physically confined to the low-lying riverbed. Yet, on a literary level, it completed a total cleansing of the city's memory. After the flood passed, all city planning blueprints, land ownership certificates, early building permit approvals, and underground pipeline engineering records prior to 1864 were washed away. This disaster, precisely targeting core archives, severed the logical connection between the early pioneer camp and the mature underground architectural complex on the timeline, manufacturing an absolute historical fault line. In the official archives of the post-disaster reconstruction, municipal authorities initiated a massive project to raise several blocks entirely by 8 to 12 feet under the pretext of flood prevention. However, When historical researchers dug deep into the Denver municipal archives of the late 1860s and the early newspaper files of the Rocky Mountain News, they faced a massive archival black hole. In a frontier town tax system where even timber purchases and paving stone consumption would be registered, the written evidence remaining for this super backfilling project, capable of reshaping the city's geography, is almost entirely blank. Among the vast sea of municipal documents, not a single commercial invoice for purchasing backfill dirt can be found. There are no dispatch manifests for heavy machinery or wagon fleets, nor are there recruitment rosters and wage settlement receipts for thousands of earth-filling laborers. This extreme scarcity of literary records reduces the so-called municipal backfilling project to a phantom engineering crew existing only in verbal statements. The stratigraphic physical evidence recorded by modern urban explorers and independent archaeologists entering the hidden spaces beneath the sidewalks of Larimer Street and the Capitol Hill area directly pierces the narrative of this phantom project. Field mapping shows that the underground physical spaces are exceptionally dry, completely lacking the sedimentary traces of being soaked by devastating floods or repeatedly scoured by riverbed silt. Explorers confirmed highly exquisite brick and masonry work, structurally complete trapezoidal stone arches, and old wooden doors and glass display windows with complex decorative moldings located several feet below modern streets. In certain dead-end areas of the underground passages, the accumulated dirt exhibits the stratigraphic fault characteristics of rapid deposition, entirely devoid of the batch dumping and manual ramming operational marks necessary in municipal backfill projects. The dirt rigidly presses against the intact glass windows and carved door frames. This state points to an instantaneous mudflow burial, not a drawn-out municipal construction. From archival vacuums to physical faults, the 1864 Cherry Creek flood is viewed within the alternative historical hypothesis framework as a deliberately mythologized cover-up. Publisher William Byers utilized the post-disaster reconstructed newspaper to quickly unify public discourse. This ordinary flood of limited scale was stitched into a deluge of the magnitude required to reshape the entire city's geography, thereby becoming an excuse to explain why massive underground spaces existed beneath the city. Through this technique of historical reconstruction, pioneers whitewashed the ready-made underground city beneath their feet as their own municipal record of spending vast sums to raise the streets. Those exquisite buildings, deeply buried under the dirt and cleared out once again, completed their transfer of ownership on both legal and historical levels from then on. This buried underground network does not terminate in the downtown commercial districts. The scale of its physical extension revealed a much more massive spatial layout at the end of the 20th century. In 1989, on the Adams County Plains, tens of miles away from downtown Denver, an independent geological exploration team led by Dr. Richard Sauter used low-frequency ground-penetrating radar to conduct a gridded scan of the area that would later become the site of the Denver International Airport. The feedback data from the radar bands outlined massive and regular geometric anomaly reflection signals in extremely deep strata, 80 to 120 feet underground. The scan images clearly displayed a massive structure, similar to a modern city street grid, accompanied by multiple arched cavities stretching for hundreds of meters and high-density metallic signals. The official Geological Soil Survey reports issued categorized these echo signals simply as natural limestone caves or deep groundwater aquifers. But Dr. Sauter's mapping data emphasized that the geometric precision of these deep underground structures was extremely high, and the alignment of their grid presented a perfect parallel correspondence with the layout of the underground city in 19th century downtown Denver. This physical overlap indicates that a massive ancient infrastructure network, far exceeding the scale of the Denver urban area, existed long before beneath the dirt of the Adams County plains. Merely months later, when groundbreaking began for the Denver International Airport, the core area of the grid detected by radar was immediately sealed off by military-grade security fencing, designated as a deep excavation restricted zone, strictly off-limits to conventional contractors. In the fall of 1993, as the construction deep beneath the main terminal of the Denver International Airport advanced, the engineering reality behind this blockade gradually surfaced. Thomas, a former outsourced engineering staff member who participated in laying the automated baggage system, released an exploration log after leaving his position. According to his description, when the core engineering crew pushed down to the 5th and 6th underground levels, the construction logic completely deviated from conventional building procedures. The engineering team did not carry out any standard concrete foundation pouring operations. Instead, they deployed large laser excavation equipment to cut and clear the highly compacted sedimentary dirt. As the dirt was progressively stripped away, massive stone arches, exquisite carved stone pillars, and giant domes with distinct classical styles were revealed at the bottom of the abyss. These monoliths, buried 100 feet underground, shared the exact architectural format as the refined buildings beneath Denver's downtown Larimer Street, but their volume was magnified dozens of times. The site foreman issued strict confidentiality orders under the pretext of rare geological relics. Thomas and some engineering personnel deduced that the automated baggage system, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars, frequently malfunctioned and was eventually declared abandoned by officials, with its complex conveyor belt network and physical isolation zones, was actually a physical barrier established to seal off and cover up these deeper ancient ruins. Reviewing the Denver Municipal Audit Archives and declassified engineering change contract records from the early 1990s, the airport project's budget skyrocketed from an initial $1.7 billion to nearly $5 billion. A final urban engineering review report from 1994 recorded an anomalous directive. The official document explicitly stated that after 5 massive multi-story buildings were completely constructed underground, the Engineering General Command suddenly announced the abandonment of these buildings, citing positioning errors and structural substandards. Faced with such a massive engineering change, the municipal executive documents did not order explosive demolition to reclaim the space, but directly instructed the engineering crew to completely bury these 5 buildings, intact with dirt, and subsequently built the existing main terminal structure directly above them. Deeply comparing the excavation manifests preserved in the archives, the total actual dirt removal volume recorded in the literature far exceeded the theoretical physical dirt volume required to construct the currently public 6-level airport underground facilities. Underground city researchers point out that these massive overflow dirt excavation records, along with that administrative order to bury the 5 buildings intact, are actually the modern municipal system utilizing official documents to cover up its massive clearing of the preceding core area and subsequent physical resealing operations. The massive underground network of the Denver International Airport profoundly overlaps with the ancient ruins in physical space. When the massive subterranean megastructures and the exquisite ruins of the city center echo each other in space, this century-spanning cover-up operation finally completes its closed loop on a cognitive level. In today's underground commercial street tours of Larimer Square in lower downtown Denver, a systematic cognitive dimensional reduction operates day after day. Tour guides face those high-density red brick walls fired at extreme temperatures, trapezoidal stone arches requiring Roman Mason-level skills, and street-facing display windows that completely violate the lighting logic of basements, using a flattened rhetoric to collectively refer to them as former first floors elevated for flood prevention. Indoctrinated by this tourism interpretation system, tourists standing before the exquisitely crafted remains of ancient architecture, facing physical evidence that could absolutely not have originated from an 1860s frontier pioneer camp, collectively abandon their questioning of basic architectural common sense and logical disconnects. When the physical entity evidence, witnessed with one's own eyes, creates an irreconcilable conflict with official literature, cognitive inertia chooses to rely on this reduced dimension explanation, rather than believe the direct presentation at the physical level. The tourist script successfully diverts public attention away from physical anomalies, compressing a history of discovering and occupying an ancient site into an early flood prevention engineering record. From the ordinary Cherry Creek flood that erased early city-building archives, to the phantom street-raising project lacking material purchase records beneath the city center, and further to the deep structures enveloped by massive budgets and buried building orders deep within the Adams County plains, a chain of falsification runs through Denver's literary system. Exquisite predecessor ruins were buried by dirt, subsequently covered by the rough wooden planks of pioneers, and finally redefined in the narrative of the modern tourism industry. Within this intersection of strata and archives spanning time and space, the physical evidence consistently points to a cold deduction. Those refined classical buildings, the massive underground grids, and the unfathomable deep spaces surpassed the productivity limits of early pioneers. We built a city on this dry riverbed, but this was not purely the civilizational pioneering of a wilderness. Humanity might not be the creators of civilization, but rather parasites upon its ruins.